Chapter 701. The man on her wedding night was not him. Mo Ding grunted and said, "Never mind. I don't want to say anything more about this. Anyway, you have to help me thank the media and bosses outside properly." Mo Ding looked at Mu Feiren and told her to change quickly while he left the room. Mu Feiren sat there and took a deep breath. She sighed heavily. After being together for a few years, she naturally knew what he was thinking. He had a huge ego and he had probably been angry for the past few days. All because she was a public figure. Actually, this was also a reason why she wanted to back out of the limelight. She thought that if she no longer had everyone's attention, her marriage would have a smooth sailing future. However, Mo Ding did not think this way. He was a proud man and he always felt that he was not deserving of Mu Feiren. When he walked out, the staff outside were all busy. There were too many people and the wedding was too chaotic. People were walking all over the place. When the staff saw Mo Ding come out, they hurried over and said, "Director Mo, upstairs is already prepared. The media asked if there will be a crashing of the bridal chamber today and if they could go film." "What crashing? There'll be no such thing," he said impatiently. "No, go tell the media properly that we want to spend time alone together. They can go and film the room now. These media groups are haughty. If we don't treat them well, who knows what they'll say about us. We need to tell them explicitly." "Okay, but if they go to film the room and if Sister Feiren knows, will it?" "Will it what? It's just a room that has not been used. And go chat up the bosses outside. If Feiren doesn't want to act in the future anymore, this will be our best chance. We won't be able to do this in the future." Actually, he also wanted to reap more benefits from this wedding. What a good opportunity to accumulate wealth. It would be a waste to not make use of it. Also, Mu Feiren kept saying that she didn't want to act that much anymore and she wanted to slowly back out of dramas. This chance was all the more hard to come by. It might not happen again and he had to cherish it. The event tonight naturally circled around the bride and groom. The supporters also teased them playfully. After a while, some celebrities were also invited to join in the fun upstairs. Knowing there were cameras around, the celebrities provided plenty of variety show effects. From the small celebrities behind, the host slowly focused on the big celebrities in front. The host saw Lin Che at first glance and asked, "Lin Che, why are you sitting there so quietly? Come here, come here." Lin Che waved her hand frantically. The people before her all performed some sort of talent. They told jokes, sang songs, and were forced to do ugly expressions. She didn't know how to do anything. The host said, "Come on up. I'm not asking you to sing. Relax, we don't dare to make you sing. Everybody might run away." Everybody heard this and burst into laughter. Lin Che knew that she was stumped. She looked speechlessly at the host. The host simply called her up. With no other choice, Lin Che jumped on stage. After that, the host saw Gu Jingze below and bravely called him out too. Gu Jingze never liked participating in variety programs. He took part in them very minimally. Everybody thought that Gu Jingze would not go up. However, Gu Jingze looked around, shook his head helplessly, and went up the stage too. Everyone became even more excited. The host almost couldn't believe it himself. At least with Gu Jingze up on stage, the host wouldn't dare to make things difficult. Because of this, Lin Che was once again in the news. Everybody thought that Mu Feiren was very supportive of Lin Che. She even treated Lin Che so well during her wedding. Gu Jingze gave Mu Feiren a lot of face. Mu Feiren looked at him gratefully and thanked him. Gu Jingze said, "I wish you a blissful marriage." He looked at Mo Ding behind but did not say anything. The wedding ended at midnight. Mu Feiren went up to the hotel room. Just as she was about to enter, the media crew came out from inside. Mu Feiren froze as she looked at the cameras. She said, "You guys are..." The media crew laughed and said, "Director Mo allowed us to film. We filmed your romantic bridal chamber. Hee hee." Mu Feiren's heart raged inside her. What was the meaning of this? It was her wedding, the wedding that she anticipated so long for. Now, it was being used as a prop for a show. Even their one and only private place was now being filmed by the media. Mu Feiren opened the door and went in. Mo Ding was browsing through the reports on Weibo. Mu Feiren asked, how could you let them film our room? Tonight is our first night as a married couple. I haven't even seen our room. Ah, it's just filming. The media requested, so it's not nice to turn them down. You Mo Ding, is today our wedding day? Do you want to marry me? Or is it because I said that I'm stepping away from the limelight, so you hatched the idea of earning money through a wedding? Is that why you decided to hold a wedding with me? Feiren, he looked up. Don't be so childish. Mu Feiren looked at him. Childish. She closed the door forcefully. You can stay here and count your money. She walked out, her nostrils flaring. Everyone knew that they dated for 8 years. Everyone thought that this was definitely true love. However, she knew that her own heart ached. She always wanted to lead an ordinary life, but Mo Ding he simply never knew what she wanted. Hugging her own shoulders, she slowly dragged her gown behind as she walked out. However, at this moment, someone suddenly walked towards her, clad in a black trench coat and boots. He looked abnormally cold. Mu Feiren thought that his posture seemed a little strange, as if he could fall at any moment. She asked strangely, Sir, are you okay? Are you feeling unwell? The person looked up. A pair of pitch-black eyes stared straight at Mu Feiren. Immediately, her body was firmly bound. Before she could react, the man already dragged her into one of the rooms. Who are you? She was pressed down. Then, the man's icy body came onto her. By the time Mu Feiren realized what was happening, she already could not resist. She kept her legs together desperately, but they were still forcefully pried open. It was her first time. Although she had been with Mo Ding for many years, she always protected it well. Mo Ding also somehow simply didn't want to touch her. Thus, tonight was the most crucial day for her. It was the most meaningful day. That was why she had such a big reaction when she saw people film her bridal room. However, how could she ever think that her body that she protected for so long would? When everything calmed down, the man looked at her in the dark, grabbed his things and jumped out of the window. This was the rooftop. Mu Feiren could not think of anything else. She could only cry as she tried to grasp what had just happened to her. However, she got up and ran out in a daze. Chapter 702. Lin Che bumped into Mu Feiren in this state. After Yu Minmin left first, Lin Che bade farewell to Gu Jingze and took Abai to leave the hotel. When they went out, it was already dark. The two of them waited for the reporters to disperse before they left so that they would not be bombarded. Abai said, I didn't think that a celebrity's wedding would be so lavish with so many reporters. Lin Che replied, of course it would be like that. Mu Feiren's status is not ordinary. She is C Nation's modern Marilyn Monroe. Do you know how important she is now? Wow, that impressive. Oh right, just as Abai wanted to say something, they heard some whimpering sounds in the dark. Lin Che froze. She saw a hand leaning against the wall. She got a shock and then quickly ran over. There's someone there. Come take a look. Abai ran after her. However, when Lin Che saw the person at the corner, she was stunned. It turned out to be Mu Feiren. Sister Feiren, what happened to you? Shouldn't she be in her bridal chamber? Why was she? Mu Feiren looked alert. Her clothes were messy and there were wounds on her face. It was obvious that she had been through something unimaginable. It was her wedding night. How did she end up in this state? Mu Feiren said weakly, take me away, I can't let the reporters see me. She grabbed onto Lin Che who froze and then quickly came to her senses. She hoisted Mu Feiren up and hurriedly took her to her own car. In the car, Abai asked, where should we go now? Lin Che looked at Mu Feiren who sat there covered in bruises. She looked so different from her usual bright and beautiful appearance. It made her heart ache. She knew that they couldn't go to the hospital. Otherwise, there would countless reports and speculations immediately. She thought for a while. They could only go back to the GU residence. It was the safest place and absolutely would not have any paparazzi. Furthermore, there were maids who could help look after Mu Feiren and a reliable family doctor to treat her wounds. Go to the GU residence. Mu Feiren rested along the way as if she just lost half of her life. When they arrived, Lin Che patted her awake, we're here. Let's go in and talk. Mu Feiren looked up strangely. You live here? Yes, let's go. Lin Che and Abai helped Mu Feiren in. Mu Feiren looked around strangely. Curiosity was written all over her face. When they were inside, the maid saw them and asked Lin Che in surprise, Madam, what happened? Hearing them greet Lin Che as, Madam, surprised Mu Feiren. She looked at Lin Che, unable to comprehend it. However, what was more surprising was that Gu Jingze walked out after that. Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze. Something happened. Is the doctor around? Gu Jingze's gaze fell on Mu Feiren. He looked at her and nodded. Stunned, Mu Feiren said, This is this. Lin Che looked embarrassingly at Mu Feiren and said sheepishly, About this I'll explain it to you next time. But Sister Feiren, you can't tell anyone, okay? Mu Feiren looked at Lin Che in surprise and then at the luxurious living room. Then, she seemed to understand something. So I see, she nodded quietly. It's okay, since you've helped me like this, I won't tell anyone. Lin Che smiled and helped her in to take a seat. A while later, the family doctor soon arrived. The doctor assessed Mu Feiren's injuries and said, It looks like the area below bled. Your undergarments are covered in blood. Mu Feiren nodded with red eyes. Lin Che simply could not believe it. She asked in shock, Did Mo Ding do this? This was too much. How could he be so violent to a woman? No wonder Gu Jingyu did not have a good impression of him. However, Mu Feiren burst into tears. She shook her head and tried to hold back her tears. Large droplets fell down her cheeks. It wasn't him. What? Lin Che was even more shocked. Mu Feiren said, I don't know who it was either. The doctor asked, Then, can I examine you? Mu Feiren nodded. The doctor examined her and then collected some of the traces. She said, If you need to make a police report, this will be evidence. Mu Feiren looked at it disgracefully. More and more tears fell. Finally, she only shook her head. She couldn't make a police report. If she did, this would only spread far and wide. She was not an ordinary person. The entire country knew who Mu Feiren was. Furthermore, there were so many expressive netizens online. Who knew what kind of things they would say? She really felt that she would not be able to take it. Shaking her head, she said, I'll keep the evidence first, but we don't even know who it was. Lin Che said, I can check for you. Since the target was Mu Feiren, there were many possibilities as to who it could be. Including those fans who were extra concerned about Mu Feiren. Some fans might probably like her to such an extreme that it could possibly be one of them. Lin Che pitied Mu Feiren even more. She said cautiously to Mu Feiren, You should get some rest first. Don't worry about anything else. Should I inform anybody? Mu Feiren thought of Mo Ding, but shook her head in despair, There's no need to. There's nobody important to inform. I'll take a rest. I'll get better tomorrow. Okay. Lin Che left Mu Feiren to rest. She went out and saw Gu Jingze. She said to him, Sister Feiren usually takes good care of me and she looks so pitiful like this. Who did this to her? What a monster. To do such a thing to a woman. Furthermore, to torture such a beautiful woman like Mu Feiren so tragically. As a woman, it made Lin Che feel extremely angry. Gu Jingze could never understand her thoughts. Hearing her say this, he nodded, I'll get my men to check with the hotel. Lin Che nodded. Seeing Abai come out, she said, You better be careful when you go out. It seems like B City is also very dangerous. You're a girl by yourself. Don't run around on your own. Abai replied, I'll be fine. I know Taekwondo. Lin Che said speechlessly, You only have your little fists. However, Lin Che thought that perhaps she should also learn some martial arts and protect herself. At least, when she bumped into bad guys, she wouldn't be blindly bullied. Seeing Mu Feiren actually suffer such a situation today, she really felt uneasy. Gu Jingze said, Don't worry. I will protect you. Nothing of that sort will happen to you. Oh right, I've called Chen Yucheng over. Oh, that's right. He's a psychologist and probably knows how to help Sister Feiren better than we do. At night, attendants watched over Mu Feiren. However, this night was not so peaceful. Gu Jingze received news in the middle of the night. He looked at Lin Che who was in deep sleep. Chapter 703. You are pregnant, what else do you think? She was like a little pig recently, sleeping so soundly. He knew that she was very tired, so he did not disturb her. He quietly left the room. His intel said, "We've checked the hotel surveillance and there wasn't anything out of the ordinary except for one mafia boss from A Nation, Black Eagle, who appeared to have checked into the hotel just before. However, he vanished without a trace at night." Black Eagle? Gu Jingze frowned. Why would this person suddenly come to C Nation? Why was he even allowed to enter? Black Eagle was the head of a famous killer group. He was fierce and ruthless. Nobody knew his real name and everyone called him Black Eagle. He had always wandered around the world, but he had never been allowed entry into C Nation. How did he come in this time and even stay in this hotel right under their noses? What was more suspicious was why he came to C Nation. To prevent any chaos, C Nation banned his gang from entering. Thus, his business never touched C Nation. What kind of wind blew him here? Gu Jingze knew that if he was really the culprit, Lin Che could not know about this. The next day, when Mu Feiren woke up, she was already feeling a lot better. Lin Che had the maids prepare a fresh change of clothes and necessities for her. When she came out of the shower, she looked at Lin Che and smiled. Lin Che said, "Sister Feiren, come and eat." Mu Feiren had been through the ups and downs in the entertainment circle for years. She was very professional when it came to dealing with unexpected events and personal matters. Thus, she now seemed a lot better. She looked at Lin Che and then looked around again. She sat down and said to Lin Che, "No wonder you're so close to Gu Jingze, and also, no wonder you know so many rich heirs. It turns out that you also have a status, and this status is not simple at all." Lin Che felt even more sheepish. This was all accidental actually. Gu Jingze is just my husband and he has helped me in my career. However, I also hope that I can achieve things through my own hard work. Of course, I didn't say that you got famous because of your status. Of course, everybody knows about your abilities. I can see it too. I know that you made it all on your own, be it in your acting skills or your stand in the circle. If it was not because of your abilities, I wouldn't have liked you all along, Mu Feiren sighed. It's just that I didn't expect you to hide so much. She looked around this room. Is this your and Gu Jingze's home? Yes, Lin Che replied. Mu Feiren was amazed. It is indeed extraordinary. Lin Che said, I still hope that Sister Feiren won't tell anybody. Of course. Just then, Gu Jingze also came out. Mu Feiren quickly stood up. Hello, Mr. Gu. Thank you for yesterday. Gu Jingze looked at her and nodded. I know Miss Mu takes very good care of my Lin Che, so you don't need to thank me. I do this on my own will. His words, my Lin Che, sounded extremely meaningful. Lin Che pursed her lips and looked at Gu Jingze. Gu Jingze lifted his hand and caressed her hair. Lin Che frowned and tidied her hair disdainfully. Mu Feiren's heart ached further. This kind of life. It looked simple and peaceful. It was exactly what she wanted. She originally thought that as long as she backed out from the limelight and was no longer a big celebrity, she wouldn't be the Mu Feiren in everybody's eyes. She could then have this kind of life. However, looking at Gu Jingze and Lin Che made her sadly realize that it wasn't the case. It was as if her dream was shattered. Gu Jingze was so famous, so capable, so high and mighty. Lin Che was also a public figure with the paparazzi following her everywhere. Their lives should have been even more chaotic. However, they could still have such an ordinary and sweet life. Mu Feiren also thought that Gu Jingze was quite different from what she imagined. As she watched his interaction with Lin Che, she really envied Lin Che. Although she had pretty much adjusted herself back to normal, she still couldn't eat a lot. After breakfast, she bade farewell to Lin Che and Gu Jingze as she didn't want to disturb them. Lin Che said, Sister Feiren, I've already engaged a doctor for you. He'll contact you later. Well, thank you, Lin Che. She looked at her gratefully and thought that she was really lucky to bump into Lin Che. If it was someone else, she would probably be done for today. Lin Che sent her out. She then sighed and said to Gu Jingze, I think she is already very impressive. She just went through such a thing and she could still face it so bravely. She's truly very strong. An ordinary girl probably wouldn't be able to take it. Gu Jingze nodded and said, she has many years of experience after all. Lin Che asked, have you checked with the hotel already? Gu Jingze shook his head. We couldn't find anything. Don't bother with it for now. Aren't you going to the United States to film? Oh, yes. In that case, I probably won't be able to check in on Sister Farron for now. This time, she would be going to the United States for a long time and it was so far away. She couldn't possibly go back and forth so often. Gu Jingze said, okay, rest assured and go to the United States. Don't think too much, I'll get people to watch over Mu Farron's side. Okay, there's no point in me checking on her actually. With Dr. Chen's care, she'll definitely get better. It's just that she looks so pitiful now and she would definitely be very sad thinking about it. And she just got married. Mu Farron returned home. Mo Ding immediately interrogated her strictly, where did you go, Mu Farron? You didn't come back the whole night and I couldn't find you. Mu Farron said, nowhere. I'm going in. I still have a press release in the afternoon. You Mu Farron, I groomed you. No matter how impressive you are, it is all thanks to me. You are not a big celebrity who made it by herself. You are the little artist who stood at my door on a rainy night and begged me to support you. Do you understand? Mu Farron leaned against the door. Her heart hurt even more. At this moment, she wondered why exactly she persevered for so many years. Lin Che left C Nation and was very soon on her way to Los Angeles. However, the flight this time was not enjoyable. She puked several times on the plane. Bai was with her. She looked speechlessly at Lin Che. What happened to you? Why didn't you say that you have such bad motion sickness? Lin Che said, I don't usually have motion sickness. It feels really terrible this time. If you don't have motion sickness and you're puking so much, whoa, are you pregnant? Lin Che fiddled with her own hands and said hesitantly, I don't know either whether I am pregnant or not. Huh, why do you not know if you're pregnant? Did you have your period? Lin Che shook her head. Bai asked, then, do you constantly feel like puking? Lin Che nodded. Do you and Gu Jingze normally take precautionary measures? Lin Che blushed. We haven't for a while now. Oh my god, then, you're pregnant, Lin Che, what were you thinking? Chapter 704, yes she was really pregnant. Bai was speechless, I really have to hand it to you. Lin Che said, I've never been pregnant. How would I know? Seriously, my 15-year-old classmate knew she was definitely pregnant on the first day. How can you be so stupid? Education in this aspect is not that good in C Nation. Bai said, I'll get you a pregnancy test kit when the plane lands. There's no need to. I can get it myself. How could Lin Che make her help her with this? Since she really wanted to test, she should get it herself. The flight was more than 10 hours. By the time they reached the destination, she was already dead tired. However, Bai still dragged Lin Che to buy a test kit. They went to the hotel and Lin Che took the test. Lin Che stayed in the washroom for a long time. She sat there and stared at the stick. For this pregnancy test kit, if there was a plus sign, she was pregnant. If it was a minus sign, she was not pregnant. Right in front of her eyes, a plus sign slowly appeared. She suppressed the joy inside her as she held her hand against her mouth. Her heart palpitated excitedly. She really was. She touched her own belly. She was finally pregnant. It was hers and Gu Jingze's. Actually, before this, she already had this thought. However, she was worried that it would be a false alarm again. Thus, she had a wait and see attitude. After a while, she would be able to tell if she was pregnant. Anyway, if she really was pregnant, the child wouldn't just disappear from her belly suddenly. However, it was really confirmed now. She was naturally elated. When she went out, Bai was waiting by the door. Lin Che looked at Bai and nodded shyly. Bai then said, okay, I really have to hand it to you. I knew you must be pregnant. Oh my, now that you're pregnant, how are you going to film? Lin Che said, since I've already taken up the role, I definitely must go on with it. I'll tell the director. Thankfully, it's a science fiction movie. Even if it was an action movie, they would do edits later. I won't have to fight. Furthermore, it's a masculine show. My scenes as the female leads are not as numerous as the supporting males. Don't worry. Bai said, you should also be more careful. Oh right, are you going to call Gu Jingze? Lin Che said, I might as well. Her face turned redder and she really didn't know what to say at the moment. However, Bai already helped her make the call. The moment the call got through, Lin Che felt more fearful. She was not ready. She heard Gu Jingze's deep voice penetrate through the phone, what's up? Lin Che glared angrily at Bai and could only say, well, nothing. It's nothing. I'm just asking what you're doing. I'm at work. What's up? It's night over there but it's daytime here. Is your brain not catching up with the time difference? Go to hell. It's not like that. I just there's something, Lin Che stuttered. She was absolutely tongue-tied. Lin Che, what's up? Did something happen? And no, Lin Che was simply too shy. She said, never mind, it's nothing. I'm hanging up. Then, she ended the call. Bai looked at her scornfully, Lin Che. Lin Che leaned against there and already had no mood to do anything else. She only caressed her belly. She really wanted him to know, but she was so shy that she didn't know how to tell him. However, she was more overjoyed than anything else. She smiled as she sprawled across the bed, holding her cheeks with her hands. Seriously, getting pregnant indeed didn't seem difficult. The next day, Lin Che arrived at the production set. Some people were already starting to film. They were filming a secret infiltration. There weren't any obvious initiation. They only filmed secretly and in the dark. Lin Che followed a translator and an English teacher. Whenever she was free, she would recite some English, taking the opportunity to learn some of the language. Bai watched at the side. She took care of Lin Che as an assistant. She constantly had Lin Che's pregnancy in mind. Thus, she would quickly intercept any dangerous movement. She only relaxed when the director reassured her numerous times that there would be no danger. After an entire day of filming, Lin Che's first day of filming surprised everyone. Nobody thought that AC nation actor with an Asian face could act so well. Lin Che was actually learning as she filmed. She observed the Hollywood acting style and gradually took mental notes herself. After that, with their enthusiasm, her acting skills once again grew exponentially. She continually sought self-improvement. Thus, her acting skills naturally developed quickly. In the afternoon, Lin Che and Steven discussed the movie. Steven told her some things to take note of for this scene. Lin Che listened to the translator's message and thought about it. Just then, someone came in from behind and said, Lin Che, there's a very tall and handsome man outside looking for you. A man? Why was there a man? Lin Che stood up strangely. The person who came in was part of the production crew. She shrugged her shoulders, indicating that she had no idea what was going on either. However, the crew member was still looking in the direction of the door and smiling with infatuation. Lin Che said, oh, I'll go out to take a look. She handed the script to the translator and walked out. The moment she stepped out, she saw Gu Jingze outside, standing straight with his hands in his pocket. Why was he here? No wonder the crew member said that he was tall and handsome just now. Actually, the men over here were taller on average. It wasn't that there were no short people, but those who were 1.8 or 1.9 meters tall were not hard to find. However, even in a place like this, Gu Jingze still stood out with his height. On top of that, he had such long legs. Thus, he was still a handsome guy as he stood there. Those charming eyes were inevitably sexy. Furthermore, a luxury car's value would not change no matter where it was. They could recognize the car that was parked outside. They could also recognize this man's clothes, shoes, and wristwatch. They knew how expensive those were. Thus, countless people turned their heads as he stood in this foreign place. Lin Che walked over. Gu Jingze, what are you doing here? Gu Jingze looked at her. What exactly were you trying to tell me yesterday? He grabbed a hold of her hand and lowered his head to stare at her. That intimate image made everyone look and point their fingers. This couple looked very interesting. Lin Che was dumbfounded as she looked at him. Did he rush here because of that call from yesterday? But she blushed and lowered her head until it could not go any lower. Chapter 705. She seemed very fragile at that moment. Gu Jingze looked at her demeanor and was worried. He frowned and his voice grew hoarse. Tell me, what exactly happened, Lin Che? However, Lin Che still refused to say anything and even turned away. Gu Jingze grew more anxious. He chased up to Lin Che and stood in front of her. Lin Che, will you tell me? Lin Che felt his head looking down at her. His face was all twisted and his gaze was much darker. Lin Che speechlessly looked at Gu Jingze. This man was way too anxious. Idiot, Gu Jingze. I'm pregnant. Gu Jingze's face stiffened. He looked straight at Lin Che as if a movie scene froze up. Pregnant, you. His thin lips quivered. He obviously heard it loud and clear, but he still asked her again. Lin Che nodded and looked into his eyes. She was unable to see through them. Then, Gu Jingze carried her up. Ah, Gu Jingze. What are you doing? Put me down. Lin Che felt herself get spun around. When he stopped, he was still holding her up and looking up at her face. Really, she was pregnant. Lin Che hugged his head and looked down at him. That deep gaze of his made her face feel hot. Seriously, she couldn't take his focused gaze the most. Especially like this. It was as if he was piercing right through her and firing her up from within. She was amazed at how there could be a man like this on earth. His eyes were enough to kill somebody, and it was not because they were sharp. Rather, it was because of that gentle gaze. It was so gentle that it made her willing to do anything for him, including ending their own lives. She looked away and he finally put her down. He said, "Come, let me take you out." Lin Che replied, "I need to tell the crew first." "Okay, I'll wait in the car outside." His eyes were still fixated on her as he smiled. Lin Che's heart was sweetened. She was worried that she might not want to let go of his hand anymore. She quickly collected herself and ran inside. The crew member who came in asked her, "Hey, Lin Che, was that your boyfriend?" Lin Che nodded sweetly. That person gave her a thumbs up and seemed very envious. Lin Che was even happier with her praise. Steven saw that she was back and asked, "Is the man outside your boyfriend?" Lin Che nodded, "Yes, director." He looked outside, rubbed his chin, and nodded, "Yes, he has a very good image." Has he considered being an actor? I think his image is the closest to our requirements for an Asian image, be it in height or physique. He'll definitely be famous here. Lin Che only pursed her lips and smiled. She said, "No, he'll never act." "Oh, is that so? What makes you so sure?" "Of course, I'm certain that he doesn't want to be an actor, but I must still thank you for your interest." He really could be famous. The director still thought that it was a waste. Lin Che could only smile. He was the big CEO Gu. Why would he come here to act? It was really impossible. She walked out and Gu Jingze was already waiting in the car. Lin Che got in the car. Seeing that he was behind the wheel, she asked strangely, "Didn't you bring your men with you?" Gu Jingze nodded. "Not many people recognize me here, so it's a lot safer than back at home. Let's go. I'll take to you eat." He held her hand and looked so intensely at her until she wanted to escape again. He then smirked and turned away. Very soon, they arrived at a restaurant by the sea. Gu Jingze got out of the car and refused to let Lin Che move. He opened the car door for her and said, "Let me help you. You don't need to exert yourself." Lin Che said speechlessly, "It's opening the car door. How exerting can that be?" Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che and still seemed concerned. He might as well carry her up. Hey, what are you doing now?" Gu Jingze said, "The ground is uneven here. I'll carry you in." "No, I'm not handicapped. You don't need to carry me. Put me down." The people around saw a bickering couple enter and couldn't help but stare after them. Lin Che noticed people looking at them and she quickly hit Gu Jingze's head. Nobody had hit Gu Jingze on his head before. He glared at Lin Che. This woman was so brave now. She dared to climb all over his head. If anybody saw this, they would definitely have thought that Lin Che was crazy. However, Gu Jingze glared at her but did not get angry. He put Lin Che down and she said, "Don't do that again. I'm not ill or anything. I'm just pregnant." Gu Jingze only looked at Lin Che and asked, "What if you fall?" "Gu Jingze, do you want me to lie in bed this entire time then?" Gu Jingze sighed and looked at Lin Che. She was really making him worry this way. He always wanted to have a child with her. He hoped to have a child to inherit her beauty and her everything. However, now that they really were going to have one, he was rather worried. It was such a small thing. It was too fragile. What if some accident happened? He believed that she definitely wouldn't be able to take it. He pondered for a while. "I'll get a doctor to follow you around tomorrow and also some bodyguards and assistants solely to stick to you." Huh. Lin Che looked speechlessly at Gu Jingze. "What for?" "It's just like a presidential guard like that girl at Yu Minmin's side. I also have some selected. I'll assign them to you tomorrow." No. There's no need for that. I'm just pregnant." Lin Che really thought that it was too troublesome. Was she going to have a bunch of people following her wherever she went? There were already assistants and a bunch of crew members wherever she went now, and she already thought that it was bothersome. If there were more people. If the media and fans saw this, wouldn't they think that she was showing off? A personal bodyguard. Furthermore, a female bodyguard would appear more specialized and expensive than male bodyguards. She couldn't afford this. She knew that all these cost a ton of money. It would definitely burn her pockets and pain her heart. This is not a good idea. The family will think that I'm weird and demanding if they know about it. I'm just pregnant. Why make it so scary? Relax. If the family finds out, they probably wouldn't be able to wait to send all the bodyguards to protect you. This is the first child for the Gu family after all. Lin Che couldn't help but think of Gu Jingyan's child previously. Chapter 706. Going to hospital for prenatal checkup. Lin Che asked, "Even more than Jingyan?" "Of course. When you get back, you'll immediately be bombarded with gifts." Lin Che waved her hand dismissively. "Well, it's like this, oh right, I only took a pregnancy test kit to check. I haven't gone to the hospital." Gu Jingze said, "I'll take you to the hospital tomorrow. We shall eat first today." He pulled her to his side. Their chairs faced each other and they sat across from each other. Very soon, the service staff served their dishes. Lin Che gazed at Gu Jingze. Those beaming eyes almost made her melt. How could anyone take him staring at themselves like this? However, knowing that he felt happy also made her very happy. Lin Che decided to stop looking at him. She lowered her head and ate her food. Gu Jingze stopped her hand. "Let me help you." Gu Jingze spoke as he took over the plate and spoon. He scooped up some of the rice and prepared to feed Lin Che. Lin Che looked around her speechlessly. There were so many people in the restaurant. Wasn't this too intimate? "There is no need. I can do it myself." "I said let me do it. Sit still and don't move." Gu Jingze did not listen to her. When he saw her wanting to shift her seat away, he pulled it even closer towards him. After that, he placed the spoon in front of her and said, "Open your mouth. Eat." Lin Che could only look at him speechlessly and then at the people around them. Gu Jingze asked, "What are you looking at? They don't recognize you." Fine. He was right. Lin Che opened her mouth to eat. Since she was no longer resisting, Gu Jingze smiled satisfactorily and fed her one spoonful at a time. They were so intimate that people started turning to look at them. The staff also looked over, smiled, and approached them with a camera. She spoke in English to Gu Jingze, "Sir, do you mind if we take a photo of you too?" Gu Jingze narrowed his eyes. "For what?" The staff said, "We thought that you two look so sweet, so we want to take a photo of you two to place on our wall of memories." Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che. It was rare that they were so happy. He was much more relaxed and said to the staff, "Okay, go ahead." The staff smiled and said, "Please be at ease. Pretend as if I'm not here and continue feeding each other." Gu Jingze smiled. He reached out and continued feeding Lin Che. Lin Che could not help but ask quizzically, "What did she say just now?" Gu Jingze took a glance and said, "They said that they wanted to take a photo of us." Huh. Just as she was talking, the staff already snapped a picture of them. Lin Che said, hey, that's too ugly. Gu Jingze replied, there's nothing ugly about it. Didn't I say that nobody here recognizes you anyway? The staff showed the photo to Gu Jingze and Lin Che. The staff smiled and said, it's really gorgeous. Take a look. You look great and match very well together. You are also very beautiful. Gu Jingze nodded and looked at the photo. The staff thanked them and said to Lin Che, Miss, you are very lucky. Lin Che was still trying to understand her, but the staff had already left. Gu Jingze continued, okay, hurry up and eat. Even if you're not hungry, the little one in there must be already starving. Lin Che blushed. She still hasn't quite gotten used to the fact that she was carrying Gu Jingze's child. She wondered if this child would grow up to be smart and beautiful like his father. She was very excited for the child to be born. She anticipated seeing how their child would look like. The two of them carried on with their food. Anybody who saw would show their puzzlement on the surface. However, they were also very envious of how these two could be so sweet. Early the next morning, Gu Jingze already prepared the car and took Lin Che to see a doctor he made an appointment with. Gu Jingze personally drove her. They went to a doctor who looked extremely professional. When the couple went in, the doctor looked at them happily. Oh, you must be my afternoon appointment. You look very young. Gu Jingze said, yes, my wife is quite young. And also very skinny. I think her first pregnancy will be a little tougher on her. You must take good care of her. Gu Jingze heard this and tightened his grip on her hand. He looked worriedly at Lin Che. Will there be any danger, doctor? Gu Jingze asked. Oh no, of course not. It's just that the first pregnancy is normally tougher to go through. I can see that you're very concerned about your wife, the doctor smiled. Gu Jingze nodded. Yes, she's so young and bearing a child for me. It's only right that I worry about her. The doctor's face was filled with sweetness. Ah, you're a really good husband. Come bring your wife here and we'll take a look. Gu Jingze led Lin Che as they walked in together. She took a blood test, temperature check, and finally an ultrasound. The doctor looked at Lin Che and said, oh, madam, you're really very pretty. Your figure is great too and your skin is so nice during your pregnancy. Lin Che smiled. She didn't understand the doctor, but she could tell that the doctor must have been complimenting her. Gu Jingze looked at her flat belly and thought that she was indeed too skinny. Her body was perfect. It was fair, smooth, and flawless. It was going to expand because of the baby and might even leave permanent scars. Gu Jingze couldn't bear it. He actually was starting to regret letting her have a baby. A woman sacrificed way too much to have a baby. Especially when the doctor also said that having a child was tough. She was still so young. Gu Jingze grabbed her hand and stared intensely at her face. Lin Che looked up into his eyes. What's wrong? Gu Jingze said, it might be dangerous to have a child. Even if it's not dangerous, it's going to leave scars on your body. Lin Che was stunned. After that, she realized that he was worried about her. She gradually held his hand reassuringly and looked at his blazing eyes. Silly, isn't it the same for all pregnant women? The danger is inevitable and I'm willing. As Lin Che spoke, her head lowered bashfully. Gu Jingze's heart still ached. Just then, the doctor smiled and said, come take a look. This is your child. It was different from back in C Nation where pregnant women could not see their ultrasound scans. Here, the monitor was facing the pregnant woman so that she could see her own child properly. There were some very fine lines inside that surprised Lin Che. She couldn't tell that it was a baby, but she could see a little dot in the middle. The doctor said, oh, it's now about 7 weeks old. We'll help you find out the exact date. Yes, it looks very healthy. Your womb is also very healthy. I hope your baby can grow healthily too. Lin Che gazed at that little dot and was filled with amazement. She tugged Gu Jingze's hand and asked, is that our child there? Gu Jingze also took a look, although his heart was filled with the concerns from just now. The scan looked very amazing, but it made him worry about Lin Che's safety more. Lin Che asked, what exactly is it? Gu Jingze said, if I could choose, I hope he will be a little skinnier and a little smaller so that when he is born, your body will suffer less damage. Lin Che's heart moved. Chapter 707. I'm biased towards you, not the child. The doctor told Lin Che about important things to take note of. Lin Che listened intensely, hoping that she would not forget a single word. This child was very precious to her. It was their first child together and it was her first time being pregnant. To her, she still didn't know how it felt like to have a child. When they went out, Gu Jingze held her hand and said, seriously, make the baby smaller. Don't eat too much. Lin Che looked impatiently at Gu Jingze. How can I do that? The baby's health is the most important. Didn't you hear what the doctor said? The baby will take in nutrients himself. You don't need to eat that much. If you do, he'll grow fat and it won't do him any good. Thus, you don't have to follow any special diet. I hope he can be a little skinnier. Seriously, what kind of father behaves like you? Lin Che laughed until she teared up. Gu Jingze said, my gut tells me that this child will definitely be a boy. You can tell. Yes, when you told me that you were pregnant, I already felt it. This child is a boy. I don't care about the gender, but if it's a boy, he's going to have a wife sooner or later. On the other hand, you're the one who's going to be by my side for life, so of course, I need to be biased towards you. By his side for life. These words sounded more moving coming out from Gu Jingze's lips. Lin Che smiled at Gu Jingze. He took up her hand and planted a kiss on it. His eyes were overflowing with emotions. Just then, an Asian couple suddenly smiled and spoke to Lin Che in Mandarin, Madam, your husband is really too good to you. Lin Che turned around and looked at that couple. The lady's belly was also already very big. The husband was holding her at her waist. They looked like they had difficulties. Lin Che smiled sheepishly. Gu Jingze put an arm around her, looked at her and said, she is my wife. If I don't treat her well, who else can I treat well? That lady nudged her own husband, look at other people. The wife is pregnant and his heart aches so bad for her. As for you, I had to beg you to come to the checkup with me. The man looked at Lin Che and then at Gu Jingze. He looked rather guilty and smiled sheepishly. He quickly pulled his complaining wife into the room. Lin Che looked up and gazed at Gu Jingze. At this moment, she felt as if he was more gigantic than normal. She was lucky to have such a doting husband. He was such a perfect man. Lin Che had never received love like this before. At that moment, she felt even more touched as she leaned into his arms. She said softly, don't worry. I'll be fine, it's just pregnancy. Furthermore, you're so capable and rich. You wouldn't let anything happen to me. We'll find the best doctor and make the best preparations, right? Gu Jingze seemed to be comforted. He nodded, you're right. I'll find the best doctor right now and we'll contact the hospital. If you want, where would you like to rest? I think the Nordics is not bad. The environment there is easier and the air is also better. Lin Che thought that she shouldn't have said all those. She stared blankly as Gu Jingze began to pick up his phone to buy a villa in the Nordics just for her pregnancy. The people beside them seemed to have heard his words and turned their heads to look. Some looked on strangely wondering if this guy was mad. Why was he talking about buying a villa in the hospital? Anyway, they were only here to confirm the pregnancy. After that, Gu Jingze went into a frenzy of arranging doctors and he also began to worry about Lin Che's safety. Lin Che wanted to go back to the production set on that day, but Gu Jingze was not willing at all. He also immediately assigned beautiful female bodyguards to her and they accompanied her to the set. At the set, Steven saw Lin Che come in with a few tall beauties behind her. He was stunned. He was about to tell her about the scenes but he did not expect her to bring so many people along. This is... Lin Che looked back and also thought that it was too extravagant. However, she could only shrug and said, this is a bodyguard. Whoa, your company is really meticulous in taking care of you. Lin Che said, yes. And it looks like your company is really very rich. It's my first time seeing bodyguards of this quality. Wow, I heard that you started the company. Oh my god, Steven looked at Lin Che in disbelief. Don't tell me that you're actually a very wealthy person. Steven recalled his past impression of her. He was not familiar with Asian actors, so he always thought that Lin Che had a different aura about her. However, he never thought too much into it. Looking at the bodyguards behind her today, He truly realized ordinary people would not be able to afford extremely beautiful and orderly female bodyguards like these. They were very expensive. Lin Che quickly replied, "How can that be? Let's go. Don't we need to talk about the script? Come on, director." After listening to the translator's words, Lin Che hastily pushed Steven through the door. The beautiful bodyguards remained outside. They looked very impressive. Steven said that an investor wanted to meet Lin Che today. Lin Che did not like meeting such people. However, Steven said, "They knew that I hired a new Asian face, so they probably just want to see what kind of lead actor you are." Lin Che knew that she could not avoid this as an actor. It was the same back at home. Since they invested money, she had to give them a little face. Thus, Lin Che agreed to it. Steven said, "That's great. You have your beautiful bodyguards anyway and they are not like Henry. They won't do anything harmful to you. Don't worry." Steven could tell that she wasn't an actor who casually bowed her head and she completely did not care about those rich investors. Of course, he couldn't understand. Lin Che faced wealthy people every day ever since she married Gu Jingze. She also never saw anyone who had as much charisma and wealth as he did. Thus, she wasn't curious about any other rich person. She only agreed to meet the investor for the director's sake. Otherwise, Lin Che would not want to entertain clients. Together with Steven, they went to the investor's hotel in the afternoon. Steven said, "I think this hotel was also opened by AC National. I've seen them once and they looked similar to you. However, I can't really tell the difference in Asian faces. I think your people all look the same." Chapter 708. Became a prisoner in an instant. Lin Che smiled and said, "Yes, it's just like how we see your faces." The bodyguards behind went into the hotel with them. Looking at the decor of the hotel, Lin Che thought that it didn't seem like the taste of AC National. She took a few steps forward when her phone rang. She took it up to see that it was Gu Jingze again. He was practically calling every half an hour and it was driving Lin Che impatient. Lin Che answered the call and said, "I'm fine, I'm already at the hotel. Nothing happened on the way and everyone is present. Is there anything else you want to ask?" Gu Jingze remained silent for a long time before chuckling, "I can't help it. I can leave others alone, but with a person with your intellect, it makes me worry when you're pregnant." "Go to hell, I'm not going to get lost." "Okay, are you at your destination?" "Yeah, I'm at the hotel. I heard that AC National opened it and it's quite huge. Who would have thought that C Nationals could do business everywhere? But of course, the GU family also has many businesses in Los Angeles." Yes, you're the best." Lin Che rolled her eyes. Gu Jingze asked, "What hotel did you say it was?" "Oh, it's called Miramar Hotel." Miramar. Gu Jingze flipped through a file in his hands as he mumbled the name. He stood up agitatedly from his seat and his eyes burned bright like a sword being pulled out of its scabbard. "Lin Che, get out from there right now." "What? It's not opened by AC National. Get out now." Lin Che was stunned and she looked to her side. Although she didn't understand what Gu Jingze meant, she still instinctively turned to leave upon listening to his tone. However, just then, "Mrs. Gu, what's the hurry? You haven't said hello to me yet." A strange voice rang from inside. Lin Che turned around to see the man coming out. It turned out to be Li Mingyu. Lin Che's entire body tensed up. Then, she relaxed as she realized that it was too late to escape. She had to face him. "Hello," she said, "I didn't see Mr. Li. Furthermore, I'm not familiar with you. There's no need to greet you even if I saw you." Li Mingyu looked her up and down. It had been a long time since he saw her. However, she always looked so dazzling without any changes. She was a special woman after all. No wonder she managed to charm Gu Jingze into her hands. He looked at Lin Che. "Your words really break my heart. Am I really not worth you looking at?" "That's not it either. It's just that I am a married woman and it's naturally not a good thing for me to casually chat up strange men, furthermore a stranger like yourself. Okay, Mr. Li, I still have things to do, so I'll be on my way." "Hey, don't be like this. It's rare that we get to meet. Let's have a chat." Li Mingyu stopped her from leaving. At this point, Lin Che also noticed that there were people following behind Li Mingyu and they did not look like kind people. Meanwhile, Stephen was already rather fearful. He looked at the two groups in puzzlement. He stared at Li Mingyu's side, then at Lin Che's side. Lin Che, this is... Lin Che listened to the translator who was still talking, but she already did not have the mood to answer. She looked at the man in front of her and said, "There's nothing to chat about with you. But I've always been very interested in Mrs. Gu. In terms of your acting, your programs, and how you stole Gu Jingze's heart. I want to know all of these. Come on, let's have a good chat," he spoke as he inched closer to her. The men behind him also stepped forward menacingly. The four beautiful bodyguards behind Lin Che also stepped forward, obviously ready to square off with them. Li Mingyu then said, "Ha, Mrs. Gu, the beauties behind you are not bad. I know that these ladies all came from the Falcon training camp. All of them are fierce individuals who experienced many battles. Gu Jingze is really so generous towards you. To train one of these would require immense manpower and resources. Each one of them is very precious. Furthermore, they were specially chosen by their looks. Tisk tisk, do you know how many of such bodyguards there are in the world?" Lin Che really did not know that these female bodyguards were so rare. She knew it was very expensive, but she never thought about how expensive it was exactly. Seeing that Lin Che remained silent, Li Mingyu continued, "There are only 8 and you already have 4 behind you. This rare." Li Mingyu chuckled, "But it's a pity." What was a pity? Lin Che looked at him. What exactly do you mean? Li Mingyu said, "It's a pity that they are not invincible no matter how good they are. Furthermore, this is my territory. If you don't want these ladies to be beaten down here, you'd better have a talk with me." Lin Che turned around to look at these ladies. They already looked ready to fight, but fighting fire with fire would not do any good. She looked at Li Mingyu. "Fine, it's just a chat, right? Let's go in and chat. The hero does eat before the loss." Furthermore, she was pregnant now. She couldn't be reckless. What he said was right. This was his territory. Even though she brought bodyguards with her, there was really no other choice since she was in his territory. Since this was the case, they would have a talk. What was there to be afraid of? There was always a solution to a problem. Li Mingyu clapped, "I just knew it. Mrs. Gu is a wise person who submits to circumstances." The beauties behind watched and could only follow them. Stephen seemed to understand that the other party was not to be trifled with. Lin Che was indeed no ordinary person. Watching Li Mingyu's men and Lin Che's ladies, he could feel that the aura they had was different. These were all people he could not afford to offend. He waved his hands, but he didn't dare to ask what he should do. He took the chance and quickly left first. Lin Che and Li Mingyu went inside. Li Mingyu said, "Come in. Let's have a good chat. Your beauties can rest outside." She said, "Just say whatever you want to say. You don't need to beat about the bush." "Oh my, don't be so boring. What's the fun in being direct? Life is a long journey. It'll only be interesting if we switched things up." Lin Che only rolled her eyes. Li Mingyu looked at Lin Che admiringly. "A beauty will always be a beauty. You look great even when you roll your eyes. No wonder Gu Jingze is smitten with you." Lin Che nearly choked. "Hey, please talk properly. I'm complimenting you, Mrs. Gu. You can forget about it. Your compliments make me want to cry." Lin Che decided to take a seat. Even if she was a prisoner now, she shouldn't mistreat herself. Chapter 709. Please be my guest for only a few days. Li Mingyu watched as she actually pulled up a chair gracefully to sit down. He was also puzzled. He smiled and shrugged. He walked over and also took a seat. He looked at Lin Che and said, "I've always been puzzled. Gu Jingze was with Mo Hilling for such a long time. Why did Gu Jingze immediately not want Mo Hilling after your appearance?" Lin Che asked, "How do you know that it's him who didn't want her and not Mo Hilling looking for trouble herself?" Ha, she was still so arrogant at a time like this. Did she really think that he wouldn't dare to do anything to her? Lin Che asked, "Did you get me in here just to ask this?" Li Mingyu crossed his legs and looked casually at her. That's right. I made you come here because I wanted to ask you that. I'm helpless. You know that Gu Jingze has always been a stubborn person. If I wanted to invite you here, he would absolutely refuse. Thus, I could only think of this method and beg someone to bring you here. Sure enough, it was all planned by him for her to come here. Lin Che shook her head and said, I'm honored to be able to make Director Li go through such an effort. No, Mrs. Gu, you are very capable. Furthermore, you're so beautiful. It's worth it. Lin Che said, actually, there's nothing much that I can tell you either. I can only say that Gu Jingze and I are actually not what you guys think. Mo Hilling is now carrying your child. You should treat her well and live life together with her. Isn't it better that our paths don't cross? There's actually nothing much to talk about between you and me. Why don't you? Lin Che stood up and said, let me go back now. Li Mingyu chuckled. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were more obvious when he smiled. Aren't you belittling me too much if you just leave like this? Lin Che said hesitantly, haven't I already tried to chat with you? There's no fruition, so let's stop here. We have different interests and we have nothing in common to talk about. Lin Che then walked towards the door. Li Mingyu did not stop her and let her open the door. Lin Che was puzzled. What was he trying to do? The moment she opened the door, the floor was covered in fresh blood. The 4 beautiful bodyguards were already on the ground. Lin Che took one look and her heart shuddered. Then, she quietly closed the door. The image of the 4 bodies was still in her mind. She turned to glare at Li Mingyu. Fine. Let's continue to talk. I want to see what you want to chat about. Li Mingyu said, that's more like it. He looked at Lin Che and said, don't be angry, Mrs. Gu. Those 4 may be dead, but it's not that they weren't good enough. The important thing is that there were only 4 of them. No matter how good they were, they would not be able to win against so many people and guns. At least they've been through professional training and long lost the thought of saving their own lives. Thus, it is also not a big deal to them if they die. If your heart aches for them, I can still return you your 4 bodyguards. I really have to thank you then. Lin Che sat down as her heart drummed. She thought that she was really not going to get out of here so easily. However, he had no intention of touching her. It seemed as if his target was not her, but it was Gu Jingze. Li Mingyu smiled and clapped his hands. Then, 4 beauties really entered. Li Mingyu said, take it that I'm returning the 4 bodyguards to you to show my apology. I'm even especially inviting you to stay here for a few days. You'll be my VIP guest here. Don't worry, this place is much more comfortable than Gu Jingze's place. If you don't want to leave when the time comes and you want to just stay here, I'll absolutely welcome you. Lin Che looked up at the 4 bodyguards. Was she now under house arrest by these 4 people? Judging by their appearance, they looked completely difficult to deal with. She sighed, realizing that she was entangled in the game of the wealthy. She was only concerned that Gu Jingze would definitely be anxious. Thankfully, her pregnancy was not made public yet, so nobody else knew about it now. Otherwise, who knew what trouble would brew if he knew she was carrying the flesh and blood of the Gu family? Lin Che said, well, on Gu Jingze's side. Li Mingyu said, don't worry. I'll definitely inform him for you, but whether he wants to come for you will have to depend on how much feelings he has for you. Lin Che glared at Li Mingyu. This man was really rotten to the core. It was her first time coming across such a devious man, but since she was already here, she had to accept it. She waved and said, all right then. Help me tell the production crew that I'll be taking leave too. Li Mingyu heard this and looked at Lin Che, who leaned against her seat. He squinted his eyes as if he was scrutinizing her. He was also very surprised that she didn't show any sign of fear at all. She even went along with his game so readily. This woman was indeed quite interesting. He was beginning to become more interested in her. Mo Hilling lost to her, perhaps it wasn't by chance. At the thought of Mo Hilling, Lin Che also thought about Mo Hilling. She looked up and asked, oh right, Miss Mo is still with you, right? How is she now? Li Mingyu froze. He looked ahead and said quietly, yeah, she's fine. Li Mingyu very quickly prepared the plane. It wasn't convenient in the United States. It was still better to return to a nation. Thus, he told his men to inform Gu Jingze while he went to the back. In a warehouse in the backyard, his men opened the door. The smell that immediately struck his nose was disgusting. What followed was very annoying yelling. "Let me out! Let me out! Jingze, how can you do this to me?" Sob. The person inside was none other than Mo Hilling. She was unkempt and her clothes were dirty. She had not bathed for a long time and she reeked. Li Mingyu brought her to the United States to see a doctor. However, she said that she could not take any medication now as it was not good for the baby. If he wanted to keep the baby, she would have to give birth first before she would take the medicine. Li Mingyu took her away in the beginning with the intention of treating her well. However, this woman became more and more annoying. She whined non-stop, making him frustrated. He lost control and hit her. She then started wailing. It put him in an even fouler mood and his attitude towards her deteriorated. No child could handle their parents being sick for a long time. Furthermore, she was just a woman. He really loved her, but no matter how much he loved her, he couldn't stand her like this. The more he loved her, the more his heart ached for her and the more he couldn't hold his temper. He squatted down and said to her, "Hilling, I've found Lin Che and brought her here, but I know the one at fault is not her. It's that man. He abandoned you and even treated you this terribly. That is why you're sick. I'll avenge you. Please get better, okay?" Chapter 710. His target had always been Gu Jingze. Mo Hilling glared at him. When he was unaware, she bit his finger. Damn it! Li Mingyu kicked her away angrily. He looked at the marks on his hand and a wave of anger surged in him. He kicked Mo Hilling a few more times. His men held him back. "Sir, the baby. The baby is more important." He then stopped when he thought about the baby. He grunted and could not be bothered to look at her again. He said, "Keep an eye on her." Then, he went out. At Gu Jingze's side, he scrutinized the photos that were sent to him. In the photo, the 4 bodyguards he assigned to Lin Che were already dead. Lin Che was fine, but she was now with Li Mingyu. How could he not worry? He looked up at the Los Angeles night sky that seemed to be a black satin. On the other hand, his eyes were even darker than the sky. After a long time, he then gradually put his hands together and his fingers tightened. He knew that those 4 elite bodyguards were no match for Li Mingyu. For normal people, those bodyguards would be impeccable. However, this was Li Mingyu. Never mind that he was swift and ruthless. He was a wealthy person in a nation and had been around for years. He definitely had power. Thus, it could also be expected that the bodyguards would die there. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey. He had to do something ruthless for Gu Jingze to see. Qin Hao stood behind and looked at Gu Jingze silently. On the other side, Abai was still watching anxiously. Gu Jingze was already this silent when she came here and it worried her. She wanted to say something, but Qin Hao kept giving her looks not to say a word. She could only watch from the side. After a long time, Gu Jingze then said, "Li Mingyu must want something. Since he wants to play, let's play with him." When he finally spoke up, Abai quickly asked, "Will Lin Che be in any danger?" Gu Jingze said, "No. My men have already gone over to look. Lin Che is now in the hotel's presidential suite. If he really wanted to do anything to her, he would have taken her to the basement. He wouldn't waste occupancy of the presidential suite." Abai asked strangely, "Then what does he want?" Gu Jingze replied, "He wants to tell me that he has no interest in Lin Che. He wants to deal with me. He wants me to stay low and not make any sudden movements. If I stay low, Lin Che will not be in danger and she will be very comfortable just like how she is now. If I dare to make any move, Lin Che will definitely be in danger." He placed the photo on the table. "Like these 4. Abai saw the bloody image and quickly turned away. She said angrily, "This person, why is he so bad? He's so violent towards girls and he's so mean. These people are so pitiful, you must definitely make it up to their families." Gu Jingze said, "That's not necessary. Why? They may not have fulfilled their responsibilities, but they still sacrificed their lives. No, they are all orphans. They were chosen from a group of orphans and groomed as orphans. That is how they end up having nothing to lose. Thus, they have been conditioned to be fearless. They were taught from a young age not to be afraid of death. People like this can still die in the hands of this man. Is this man very capable? Bai knew that bodyguards who were trained like this were absolutely the best and they were ready to fight with their lives. Gu Jingze said, Li Mingyu is not simple, but I'm afraid that this isn't his own doing. He doesn't dare to deal with me alone. He has some help. Bai thought for a while, then you should also get some help. My dad can help. Gu Jingze shook his head, your dad is alright in the United States, but I believe he will take Lin Che back to a nation immediately and leave the United States. Your dad will be powerless there. Never mind, I know my limits. You don't have to worry too much either. I'll make sure Lin Che is safe. Alright, you promise, Bai repeated. I swear, even if I die, I won't let anything happen to Lin Che. Bai was reassured by the resolve in his dark eyes. She believed that he was telling the truth. Bai finally relaxed. Since he promised, he would definitely find a way. And on the other side, Li Mingyu indeed already prepared the plane. He looked at Lin Che who was obediently watching TV in the living room of the presidential suite. She looked completely calm. He smiled as he walked in and said, you don't look scared at all. Lin Che said, you are letting me live so comfortably. What is there to be scared of? That is a given. I'm always very nice to women, even nicer than Gu Jingze. You'll soon know that I'm a good guy, unlike Gu Jingze who is so cold-blooded. He abandoned his old lover just like that. To like the new and hate the old one should always pity and cherish women. Lin Che questioned speechlessly, you better not take me as a hostage. Is this pitying and cherishing me? Aren't you a guest? You're a guest, not a hostage. Lin Che patted her own clothes, look at these clothes. I've been wearing them an entire day and I have no clothes to sleep in. I have no clothes to change into. If I'm not happy to stay here, I'll go home. Li Mingyu smacked his forehead, look at me, I'm so busy that I forgot about all these. I'll take you out to buy them right now. We're going out to buy clothes. Lin Che's eyes lit up. Li Mingyu smiled, don't worry. I just sent a photo of the 4 beauties to Gu Jingze. He doesn't want you to be like that, so he absolutely won't be rescuing you so easily. Thus, you don't have to anticipate the chance of bumping into him outside. Lin Che pouted, fine, let's go then. Li Mingyu had thought everything through and wouldn't let her out so easily. However, what if there were other chances once they were out? She thought that as long as Gu Jingze knew that she was fine, he wouldn't have to worry. There was no hurry. Li Mingyu had no intention of harming her at the moment. He only had this perverted thought of playing as her host in his game. Li Mingyu really took Lin Che out to buy clothes. There were people everywhere in the mall. Li Mingyu and his entourage walked about openly. He did not try to hide at all. When they entered a shop, he simply requested to pack everything up and took out his credit card without a word. Seeing that he was so generous, Lin Che thought that since it wasn't her money or Gu Jingze's money, she should spend more. Thus, she took the lead and brought him to look at an expensive store. I want these bags. She pointed at a bunch of bags. She wanted whichever bag that was expensive. The staff was naturally happy. They watched in surprise as the two of them wiped out everything. They had never seen such brazen shoppers who specially picked out bags that cost hundreds of thousands. There was not a tinge of hesitation.